Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to think about is the type of printer you're going to use. So for me, I use a laser printer, 600 dpi. It's a Samsung. This model is the Express M2022. It works quite well. And the paper I use is these not transparencies, tracing paper. You can buy them in kind of art supply stores and stationery shops, places like that. And they normally come in an A4 pad. I've just ripped off the cardboard off of this, and it does work quite well. And here's an example of a printed board, and you can see this paper, the tracing paper, holds the ink really well. No smudges, no crinkling. It's really pretty ideal. So next is your the UV light box you want to use. You can buy these from places like Farnell and Radionics. They tend to be quite pricey though. You're looking at like maybe 200, 300 euro. I made this one by myself. It's kind of like it's in a plant box. Got a mains cable going in, and just to show you, there is some UV fluorescent cables. The glass is kind of dirty. I normally clean it before I expose. You've got some UV bulbs in there. Plug it in and expose away. There's no smart electronics in it or anything like that. I just normally use the smartphone timer app, and I just time it for 2 minutes and unplug the cable after 2 minutes. Right, so for etching your board, what you're going to want is a big bucket. First of all, that's for holding your hot water. I'll explain why in a sec. Second of all, you're going to want a piece of Tupperware that's sealable, like a lunchbox. Does the job pretty well. And so what you do is you get your main container of acid, put just enough of it into your lunchbox, just enough to cover your board, and so you can rock it back and forth and agitate the acid over the board. And to speed up your etching time, what you want to do is heat up your acid, because if you leave it at room temperature, it's going to take forever to etch. So what I do is I put a little bit of hot water in one of these boards, and I just put the lunchbox in the hot water, and that'll heat up your acid. And normally I can etch a board in like under about 10 minutes. Yeah, so that works pretty well. So for the developer, you can use any kind of container you want. Really, I use like an old, this is a soup container, and just to give you an idea of the amount you need to put in, it's really not a lot. So you put in a tiny bit of water in the bottom, put in a few spoonfuls, tablespoons of the crystals, mix it about. It helps if the water is a bit hot, maybe not room temperature, maybe 40 degrees, 50 degrees, something like that. The crystals will dissolve faster. Put them in, and then throw your board in, and if you don't see it develop straight away, you know you haven't put enough in. Throw in a couple more crystals, shake it about, wait till they dissolve, put your board back in, and then complete that. Keep doing that process until you see the board developing, and you're good to go from there. Okay, so if you're doing double-sided boards, you're going to want a PCB drill stand to kind of be accurate with drilling your holes. This drill stand I got from Radionics for about 30 quid. It's like a universal stand. It can accept any kind of drill. And the drill is just a knockoff of the Dremel. It's a silver line. I got it from eBay for about 30 quid, and it seems to do the job pretty well. I normally just leave it on the highest speed setting, and it works just fine. A quick tip is to buy your drill bits from China, like whether it's eBay or AliExpress or whatever. If you're to buy them from Farnell or Radionics, you're probably looking at paying maybe €2 or €3 per drill bit. Whereas if you buy them from China, you can get packs of 10 for maybe €4 or €5, like various sizes. This is like a range of sizes, and this is all 0.8 mil. So it's good to have spares and have plenty lying around, because you don't want to be snap a drill and you're left without the drill size you need. Nothing worse. So yeah. Alright, so after your board comes out of your etchant, well, first of all, what you're going to want to do is rinse it off, make sure there's no acid left on it. And the next step is just to get rid of any resist that's left on the board. So to do that is I just use a nail polish remover. I soak a bit of a paper towel in it, just kind of dab it on like that or whatever. Then you get your paper towel and just rub it against your board, and you'll see the purple resist coming off on the paper towel. Just keep rubbing until all you see is copper left on the board. Then what I do is I just coat the board with flux using one of these flux pens, and I find that kind of keeps the board, keeps all the oxygen off the board for when you want to reflow it. Works pretty well. I mean, you can do things like tinning it with silver and all. I haven't really found the need to do that. It works pretty well just with a flux pen. And the solder paste I'm using is just very typical leaded stuff, bought it from Farnell. Costs about 20 quid a tube, and that's how it's done. Okay, so next thing to think about is the type of F44 board you're going to use. So the type I use is pre-sensitized copper clad board. Basically what that means is you have a layer of fiberglass, layer of copper, and then on top of that you have your pre-coated resist, and that's covered by this blue coating here. So that's the back of your board. So cutting these things it's not the easiest thing in the world, because if you're cutting fiberglass on like a jigsaw or a bandsaw, it's going to blunt your blades really quickly. So a couple of ways that I use to do them is if you're just starting out doing the odd board, low enough budget, I recommend just using a Stanley blade. These work pretty well. So you just get out a ruler and score at the lines you want to cut both sides, and then just snap that piece off. Works pretty well. If you get tired of doing that or that's not working out, you can also use a tin snips. That works pretty well too. And just make sure you don't get the serrated edge ones. I made that mistake, and it really messes up the coating, the resist coating near your cut. So if you're cutting close to the edge of your board and you go to etch it, you get all these weird patterns and it totally messes up your etch. So yeah, I just recommend getting the straight edge ones. Also, if you are tin snipping or using a Stanley blade, you're going to want some little files just to file down the edges after you cut it. Make sure your board is lying flat on the UV table when it's being exposed. If you have any little burrs on the edge from where you cut it, it'll lift it up just a little tiny bit from the artwork, and that'll leave you with like blurred lines, and just won't be the best developed board you could get. Probably mess up your lines a little bit. So next thing you can use is one of these PCB guillotines. These are super handy. Cut your board in like 2 seconds, clean cut. You don't even need to file it afterwards, but they are pretty pricey. And I'd say the only reason you'd want one of these is if you're doing loads of boards. You know, if you're just doing a board every week or two, kind of hobbyist stuff or whatever, I'd say really all you need to do is either a Stanley blade or a tin snip should do you just fine. Okay, so for reflowing my boards, what I use is a toaster oven that I got out of Argos. What I see a lot of people doing online is, you know, using things like PID control loops to control the internal temperature to within 1 degree or something like that. My experience, that's not really necessary. All you need is roughly just kind of a rough indication of what the temperature is. You can slowly ramp up the temperature, keep an eye on it, and then as soon as it hits your solder paste's melting point, just let it sit for a while, keep an eye on the board, and as soon as you see the solder paste on the biggest components go from, you know, dark grey to silver, meaning they've successfully soldered, then just open the door, let the board cool down, take it out, and it's all good. So for this, I'm using a multimeter that can accept a K-type thermocouple probe. Any way of measuring temperature that you have available should do the job. You're going to want some latex gloves just when you're working with the board in the developer and the etchant, so make sure you have a pair of those.